Second first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and we're doing it. The LIV conversation, the PGA conversation, grading them, reviewing them, seeing where this all goes. It's happening right now. And joining me to do just that, Greg DuCharme is here. Gregor, it's good to see you.
What's going on, boys? Hope everybody had a great Christmas, great holidays, safe travels. It was fun. I'm looking forward to this conversation, though.
Adorned with his brand new trophy emoji, which indicates he is our reigning trivia champion. That right there, Patrick McDonald. Patrick, hello.
What's going on, guys? Yeah, it's been a fun week home for me. A champion's welcome. I know some of you might have seen the videos out of Argentina of them coming back. It was pretty similar here in the DC area, but happy to talk to you guys today.
Yeah,
so glad for you.
What did you serve for Champions dinner? I assume you got to choose the menu and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I got a little Italian blood in me, so just a good old hearty Italian meal for McDonald family.
Kyle Porter is here. KP, tough scene, bud.
Yeah, I tried to bemoan to my family, my wife and kids about my loss. They didn't care as much about Xander Schauffele being the 2017 Rookie of the Year as I did. So I didn't get a lot of sympathy around here for what was there, by the way, what was everybody's favorite Christmas gift how about your favorite Christmas gift that you gave instead of that you got?
Ooh.
Okay.
All right. I got one. My mom and sister, there are these digital frames called Aura frames where you can load unlimited photos. And I gave one to my sister who lives in Austin, Texas, one to my mom. And we have one at our house too. And you can share photos. And so whenever my wife uploads some, they can see them too with the kids and stuff like that. It's really cool. That was definitely my top.
Snazzy. Patrick?
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, so my dad's like a big snorer. Like you can hear it from like rooms away. So I gave my mom a headband that has Bluetooth in it. So
so not addressing the problem, just having everybody else, a
Band-Aid
deal
with it.
Right. Smart. I can't see any problems there. We are not huge gift givers, but and KP, you might be with the children. You might be aware of this. I got my wife one of the adult Lego orchids. She's a big puzzler, and she will not sleep until the puzzle is complete, until the Lego is complete. But I'm worried that I've now opened up a can of worms into a very expensive Lego world that I'm not sure I want to be a part of.
It does get. I mean, the good news for you is there's not 4 of them running around like with me. There's just one wife. It is an expensive world though. It's kind of shockingly expensive. You look at the box and you're like, I don't know what can that cost? It's like the remember the Arrested Development? What's a banana? Like $8, $10?
Well, the other good thing for you, Rick, is your wife's probably not leaving them all over the floor. You don't have to deal with stepping on them, right? All that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. The price seems to go up quickly. I think mine was probably, I found this, so my 8-year, or I guess he's 9 now, just turned 9. My 9-year-old son, he is very into, he loves Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. So we got him this, hoodie of both of them doing the gritty on the hoodie.
Nice.
If I can find it, I'll share it on the screen. But he was pretty pumped about that. He thought that was a pretty cool thing.
Do you gritty, Kyle?
I mean, I do. Yeah. we got this game. Another fun.
Share that on the screen.
I'm gonna need a video.
Yeah, I will share. I will text a video. I will not share a video. We got a game called Can Jam. Have you guys ever played Can Jam, Greg?
Yeah, love.
Wait, is that the frisbee?
Yeah.
Okay. Describe how that works again.
So it's basically 2 mini trash cans that have like a mail slot in the front.
Right.
And you're trying to you're trying to throw the Frisbee and either throw it in the mail slot, which is impossible, or get it it's an open top and your partner can slam it in or hit the side with the Frisbee. So it's a partner game. You get two people going at the same time. And me and my 6-year-old son yesterday, we beat my wife and her dad, and he hit the gritty right after we won. Yeah, he was going nuts, like just running around the yard doing the gritty. So I did it with him. So if we do it again today, I'll share video of it.
Oh, so good. I've been banned from grittying in this household. It's apparently not gritty. I don't have a great segue back to LIV on this one. I usually can pull them out. But all right. So this is the conversation that we have kind of been, attempting to have for a long time. And what I want to kind of do here is zoom out a little bit, because it's very easy for us, Patrick, to be in the day-to-day, oh my gosh, another rumor, another announcement, another tournament. We're at a spot where we can zoom out, look back to a year ago, say, is LIV where we are? Are they at where we thought they would be? Are they ahead? Are they behind? And try to look at this from kind of a zoomed out 30,000 foot view.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that like the Saudi International was played this year. It seems like it wasn't right. Pebble Beach and the quid pro quo thing back in February. I think that's kind of what got the conversation rolling among the masses with, I think it was not the waiver wire, but the releases, right, that the PGA Tour had to sign for those guys to play over there. They got their cash grab. They had to play in the AT&T Pebble Beach 3 out of the next 5 years or something. And then, February was a big month. Charlie Hoffman, the rules thing at Waste Management, and then him shooting 80 the next day in all green. Zoomed out, I think LIV from a macro perspective, I think the first year they're happy with. There's obviously a lot of changes that need to be made. There's a lot of things that still need to go their way. I think the big ones, obviously the TV contract in the United States, that's definitely number one on their agenda. But from who they've gotten to play for them, in the product, the quality of the product, I think overall they have to be happy with how year one went.
Let's start with the roster. Not just my opinion, Greg, probably your opinion and the opinion of McKinsey, who did the consulting for LIV, that this is pretty much driven by which golfers you get. And if you can get the guys that are the best in the world or the ones that people care about the most, that is your path to success in however you want to define success. So the roster, has been changing over the course of the first 8 events, but they get Dustin Johnson, Cam Smith, Abe Ancer, Brooks Koepka, Joaquin Niemann, amongst many others like Bryson DeChambeau, Phil Mickelson, so on and so forth. How does this roster kind of shape up to what you thought they were going to get maybe a year ago, and how does it look heading into 2023?
Well, there are a number of players for sure. And you put the Stenson and the Rose and the Poulter and the McDowell and Phil, right? And that kind of class of player who seemed to be on the tail end of their career, it made a ton of sense for. And I think it was quite predictable. Now, maybe there are some that you didn't expect to go, some that you thought might and didn't, like a Justin Rose or somebody like that. They other players that fit that mold that didn't decide to go. So I think from that perspective, that made a lot of sense. The surprises to me would be a Dustin Johnson, a Brooks Koepka, a Bryson DeChambeau, and a Cam Smith. And you may even throw in Joaquin Niemann in there too. Those are kind of the younger players who seemingly still had a lot of legacy to play for, a lot of opportunity to contend and win major championships, a lot of opportunity to, some of them, maybe become Hall of Fame players. And you wonder, you question their decision. What's their real motive at the end of the day? Do they think they can still get in the Hall of Fame going down this road? And that may not apply to a Dustin Johnson, but you don't know what a Hall of Fame kind of situation is going to come up as a result of this. And that's not even on the forethought of anybody's mind. How will the Hall of Fame handle it? The majors have really been much more front and center with this. But then also, what are their real intentions in playing golf? What are their motives behind it? Are they looking to earn as much money as possible? Are they looking to win as many majors as possible? For the first time ever, the intention of the golfer was really brought into light and brought into question. And we haven't seen that before. I mean, you always assume, well, yeah, these guys want to win as much as they can. They want to win majors. They have their variations of goals, but they're almost always about the trophies, and they're very rarely about the dollars. And all of a sudden, the dollars got thrown into the mix. So I would say there were some surprises, but a large majority of their roster, I think, was somewhat predictable when the whole model came to light.
Lost in the major championship conversation, Kyle, lost in the OWGR conversation, lost in LIV announcing new spots for next year, is this idea that I keep going back to, that the roster as it is today, like, that cannot be the roster moving forward. There's going to have to be a constant pilfering from the PGA Tour or a constant addition from the amateur or collegiate ranks. I mean, Greg mentioned some of the guys that are at the end of their careers, McDowell and Poulter and Casey and Stenson, these guys that are going to be phased out of golf in the next couple of years. Like, this roster needs to be a living, breathing thing.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because it's so different than, like, think about if this was happening in college basketball or excuse me, in basketball or football. And you've got guys that coming out of college are household names that can kind of buoy your league, right? When a Cade Cunningham comes out, or even like a Josh Allen, he didn't play at a big time school, but he was like a big time name. If there's an alternative league for those guys, then all of a sudden that league gets buoyed by bringing them into it. That's not true in golf, because college golf is not, it doesn't matter. Like I mean, it matters, but it's not a household. It doesn't make you a household name. And so the only thing that, and this is what I think is really interesting, the only thing that makes you a household name, the only thing that makes you famous enough or important enough to really matter for a league to have you, is winning a major championship. It doesn't really matter if you've won 7 times on the PGA Tour. I mean, it kind of does, but not really it does matter, but not for the purposes that we're talking about, which is like standing up a league around you, right? And so how does LIV go about getting, I mean, they did it, like the playbook for them is Cam Smith. Like, you want as many Cam Smiths as possible, where it's like, this guy just won a major, let's give him $100 million, or I don't know, $150 million. Now we can stand up a league around those guys. And can they continue to do that? I agree with, I can't remember who said it. I think it was Patrick. LIV's farther along than certainly I thought they would be this time a year ago, even 6 months ago. I mean, they really did a good job of bringing in people that matter in terms of attention and in terms of people like paying attention to them. But they also spent $800 million to do it. And I get that the fund is unlimited, is what people keep saying, but how unlimited is it? Like, they don't want to just lose money forever. And so I think the next 2 or 3 years are very crucial for both LIV and the PGA Tour. They've got this runway apparently into whatever it is, 2025, I think. And, you know, can they keep grabbing Cam Smiths? And if not, then I don't know that LIV is going to exist 10 or 15 years from now.
Sorry.
I was just going to say a couple things on what you were saying there, Kyle. One with the college thing. Like, think about what we did in our last episode. The trivia question was about Haskins Award winners.
Yeah.
Right. And I consider myself a pretty knowledgeable golf fan, and I'm wrong on the very first question. Right. College golf is not a household situation. And even when Colin Morikawa and Matt Wolff and Victor Hovland come onto the scene, They come onto the scene because of what they do when they get to the professional rank. They don't come on the scene because of what they did in the college rank. Once they get on the professional scene, we look back at what they did in college.
Yeah.
Say, oh, okay, this is where this guy's coming from. But we're not following them as freshmen in college saying, oh, watch out. Maybe for a Tiger Woods, maybe for somebody but that is extremely rare. So I think that's an item of concern. And then the other question that comes to my mind with this roster is it the players that the Cam Smiths? Do the Cam Smiths matter, or is it the tension that Cam Smith might be leaving? Is that what really matters? Because all of a sudden he's there, and are we is LIV getting the results from that? So in this kind of other question, yeah, you have these players who matter to us as PGA Tour fans, but do they matter to the general public enough to get them to go watch LIV Golf? I think that's fascinating.
Well, and the weirdest part about all of it is it's almost like if you created another G League and the G Leagues were just trading guys back and forth. One G League got this guy. And it's like your league that isn't even really like the top, right? It's the majors that are still above you. And so I think that's another weird thing that's in play is, and a lot of people learned this year that the PGA Tour does not run the 4 majors, right? That was a joke amongst us, kind of like inside baseball thing before this year. And now it's like, actually, this is how things work. And the majors they're certainly elevated in importance this year, but they just sort of like preside over everything, to where what we're arguing about on the PGA Tour and LIV, it's like this isn't even the most important thing in golf, which is just kind of another weird wrinkle to this whole thing.
There's a lot to follow up on in what Greg mentioned, Patrick, which is like, how much does it matter and who does it matter to? Losing Bryson DeChambeau at the time, big time mattered, right? We were like, holy crap, that's crazy. He's a young guy. He's a major champion. Like that's actually nuts. I'm not sure the casual golf fan could tell you what Bryson's results on LIV were. I'm not sure I could without like going and looking it up, right? Like there's this weird issue, and maybe it's just because it's kind of hard to watch if you're not watching it, if you're not willing to throw it on YouTube or whatever. There's just like this weird disconnect of maybe how much it mattered to the PGA Tour to lose Bryson versus the incremental improvement LIV got from having Bryson.
Yeah, I think honestly, like the LIV results to them, they don't really matter, right? They're bringing in this big personality that is Bryson DeChambeau. He has a big following on social media. He has a great YouTube channel, all this stuff. That's what they want from the guy, right? Dustin Johnson's a big name. People still like to go out and watch Dustin Johnson mash drives. Cameron Smith, right? He's kind of a less stuffy version of the average modern golfer, right? He has the mullet. He talks about getting drunk with his pals. There's videos of him in the pub slamming beers. That's kind of what I think LIV is shooting for, right? They don't really care about the results of their tournaments. Is it nice that Brooks Koepka wins a tournament? Absolutely. That Cam Smith, Dustin Johnson? Yes, absolutely. But I think it's just more gravy on top of the personalities and the star power that they're trying to attract.
For those wondering, Bryson DeChambeau finished 21st in the points race. 2 10th place finishes were his best results in six starts for LIV. Greg, as we transition to 2023, obviously 8 events in 2022. They've got 14 on the schedule for 2023. This is kind of a weird little time, right? A true off season, something that the PGA Tour doesn't really get, which is good and bad. The PGA Tour, even if you are not a huge fan of the fall portion of the schedule, there is something on basically every single week. But that also probably stops the PGA Tour from making a lot of wholesale, huge changes because you'd have to do everything on the fly. LIV could come back in February and say, okay, these are now 72 hole events and we've got 100 players and we've got X, Y, and Z, and having a little bit of an off season to be able to do that makes for an interesting kind of situation.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But it's a very different thing in the game of golf. Like, you think of what happens in the offseason in the NFL, and the league is having meetings about player safety, and they're going to change rules, and they're going to review film with the refs, and they're going to go through all these different scenarios to cover their key bullet points, the changes we need to make for next season. But in golf, because each tournament in a way is self-enclosed, it starts and ends. It starts on Thursday, it ends on Sunday. You can make changes on the fly much easier because you have to have it installed by the next Thursday. Doesn't mean you have to start the planning on Sunday, or you can be planning now and install something in March to help make the product better. And it doesn't have the same connection to the effect on the competition as it would in some other sports. You're not really changing the style of play. But all that being said, with the FedEx Cup and kind of the importance of the season-long race in golf, which is, in the grand scheme of things, a new concept, started in 2007, right? That it's a fairly new concept. It does complicate that a little bit. So I am very curious about the off season in golf. I'm curious about it for LIV. I'm curious about it because of the attention that you likely won't see in the game of golf. And I think we've seen that this year. This off season has been, it seems a little longer to me for some reason, and it's probably not, but you had a lot of Tiger stuff in there, and it kind of changed things a little bit. But it took a lot of attention away from the PGA Tour. In other sports, there's a lot of attention during the off season. There's trades and drafts and combines and scouting young college players, and golf doesn't really have that. So will LIV be able to create that kind of buzz around their 14 event schedule? I don't really know. I mean, there's been a big slowdown in players moving from the PGA Tour to LIV. And whether that's because LIV ran out of spots, or because players aren't interested in going anymore, or whatever that reason is, it doesn't really matter. The point is, there's no more rumors really going around. And that's been their fuel for the entire part of their journey so far, is who's going, who's not. And that controversy has created all the buzz around LIV. So how are they going to survive an off season if there's not that kind of buzz? And I'm curious to see what they do to handle that.
There's kind of a massive litmus test coming, Kyle, of whether this is a novelty. We know one of the most viewed, and really the only thing we have is the YouTube numbers. One of the most viewed events for LIV was its first event. And then there was a time where, event after event, viewership was down and down. Is it a novelty? Were people tuning in because they wanted to see what was going on? Does that extend into season 2 when they kick off in February, which will be, they've done a good job here. I mean, it's going to be the week of the Honda Classic, but their first 2 events are sandwiched between Riviera and Bay Hill. And then their second event is sandwiched between the Players and the Match Play. Like, we're going to find out if anybody cares.
I think, yeah, I mean, yes. I think one, question I have, and maybe you can try to answer it, Rick, is who's the target audience here? Like, who are they trying to I think one thing that they've purported themselves to be doing is to be bringing in a bunch of new people to golf. And it's like, oh, okay. I don't, it's extraordinarily difficult, I think, to convert a non-golf fan into a regular season golf fan. I could rope somebody into the Masters, right? Because I could contextualize and say, hey, here's what this means. I could maybe rope somebody into a US Open. Am I going to rope somebody into the LIV Bangkok event? I mean, what am I watching? What am I experiencing there? So I'm curious about their target audience even is.
Well, I think who it is and who they want it to be is different. The PGA Tour has this problem too. The PGA Tour has two completely different fan bases. My dad and me, and they do not get serviced in the same way. LIV's, I believe, current fan base is skews younger,
Easy here.
Who want a little more relaxed stuff and can watch it on YouTube. Well, I'm not sure my dad could find a LIV round of golf to watch if he wanted to. So it's kind of weird. Now, if they start paying for time on Fox Sports or wherever it was reported that they were going to be paying time on, does that change things? But we also know, Kyle, the other problem is in this sport, the reason that younger demo doesn't always get service is because it's not a necessarily disposable income spending demographic. There's a reason why the commercials are for Rolex and Workday and like all this other stuff that that doesn't interest me at all. So it's also going to be very tough for LIV to kind of capture dollars from their audience.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. I think LIV did two things that were beneficial to the PGA Tour if they were paying attention. One, they cut down the white space, so to speak, throughout a day. They made the round shorter, and the shotgun start thing is like not ideal from just like it's not great, but it made the rounds short and consumable, and I thought that was really good. And I think the other thing that they did is they forced the PGA Tour into this idea of like, because LIV has no context at all. I don't know what Eugenio Chacarra winning. What did he win? Bangkok or Jeddah or whatever? Bangkok, I think.
Bangkok.
That doesn't mean anything. It means, I mean, you could have told me he won the Portugal Masters and it would mean the exact same thing. It just, I don't, it doesn't have any context at all. And I think that sort of forced the PGA Tour's hand of like, our competitive advantage is being able to provide context around these events that we have. And they've done I think the PGA Tour has done a bad job of that over the last 10, 15, 20 years, in that they just kept trying to create more events. And that's how you end up with 44 events, half of which don't really mean that much. And the others get diluted because you have, 44 events. And they forced the PGA Tour's hand in that Rory and Tiger and whoever were like, hey, we're playing these 13 events in 2023. And now there's real context around, like, the Phoenix Open is meaningful. The Memorial is meaningful, and I wish they'd take it a step further. And I know some other people have been big on this idea and say, hey, these events are the only ones that are getting FedEx Cup points. And that makes the FedEx Cup playoffs even more, contextualized and meaningful. I just think the PGA Tour has to lean into that, because LIV can't lean on it at all, because they don't obtain it. They don't possess any of that context whatsoever.
To put a bow on Reach, Patrick, again, this is we can only use the YouTube information here because that's the place you have to watch LIV Golf. So their best YouTube stream ever, which was LIV Boston final round, it did 878,000 views. I don't know if that's good or bad, right? I would love 878,000 views, but just to put this into perspective, Bryson DeChambeau on his own channel, his What's in the Bag, did 868,000. CBS Sports HQ YouTube channel was something similar, was the Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier UFC 252 highlights. And then Good, the massive content creation golf brand, has 68 different videos with more views than that. So I don't know if it's good, bad, indifferent. Those are the comps.
I think it's important to know that they're on TV internationally as well, right? It's not just YouTube. So yeah, the numbers are obviously not fully there, but for their reach, like, first off, LIV Boston final round was kind of a banger, not gonna lie. With Dustin Johnson's playoff win,
right?
Yeah. It was good.
Yeah, it was a good one. But their reach is, they they need to lean into, and the schedule for the second season disappointed me in this aspect, was they need to lean into the international, right? They need to be the world tour. And I mean, look at the PGA Tour. They've kind of beaten them at their own game, I feel like, with all these pathways they're creating with Japan, India, Korea. If LIV was smart, they would have kind of gone to those markets in year 2, and they only have one Australian event. They have one in Mexico, but they're leaving South Africa out of the mix. They're leaving some of Asia out of the mix. And I just wish they would have done that. I think it would have been a more successful product, even though, yeah, those YouTube numbers might have suffered just because, let's be honest, like Kyle said, I'm probably not staying up to watch LIV Bangkok. But there's a lot of people in Asia, a lot of people in China, a lot of people in India. And I felt like they kind of ignored those audiences in year 2 with the schedule.
7 events announced, Greg. Mayakoba, Tucson, Adelaide, Singapore, Tulsa, Valderrama, Greenbrier. Couple of Tulsa, baby. Cedar
That's
Ridge.
where you create a global tour and you're going to Tulsa?
It's one of the top 100 courses in America, Kyle.
According to whom?
According to the LIV Golf website.
Yeah, for sure.
There are a couple places we've seen on here, Greg. El Camaleon, Mayakoba. That's now a LIV Golf stop. The Old White Golf Course, that's Greenbrier. That was an old PGA Tour event. It hasn't been around in a couple years. Now a LIV event. Valderrama has obviously been an event and a course that we've seen globally, especially for the DP World Tour. So we're going to get some familiar places, but we've got 7 out of, I guess this is half of the events that they're going to have next year have been announced so far.
Yes. And I do think Mayakoba is very interesting just because you don't know what the PGA Tour is going to do in response to that, if anything. I just find it to be interesting. But the schedule thing, like what Patrick was saying, I find this to be a very difficult concept. You have a global tour, and Patrick mentioned a couple places that were left out. If you're going to have a global tour and you're going to have 14 events, places are going to get left out. And so you don't have this central area of a core who follows you. And in American sports, they're based in America. And when they grow big enough, like the NFL, where you have such a loyal following and you put a game in London, people will wake up earlier and alter their schedule to go find it. But are you going to alter your schedule every single week at a varying time to find a new golf event with no context and no meaning in Bangkok, in Australia, in South Africa, in who knows where else, all over the world? When it varies as much as it does, do you lose the ability to create a core? And I mean, my philosophy on viewership is you create a really loyal core fan base, and once that's established, you start to expand outward, and your core will still follow it around, and then you can attract some new people with it. So I think they're kind of caught in the middle here, where to start a global tour where you're spread out all over the world and you have one event in Australia. Is an Australian going to see one event and then all of a sudden get hooked on LIV and watch them play wherever they are in the US? Because if you're in Australia and you're watching an event in the US, it's a difficult time zone. So every time you move around different time zones, your audience has to follow it and has to find it. And I think that's a really challenging thing to develop a core fan base. So ultimately, I mean, I think they're trying to build a core in the US. That's where they have the most events. And they have a multitude of events in the US, whereas everywhere else you're getting one at the max. And I think that's a real challenge.
Yeah. They're almost operating as if they're the top, the clear-cut top tour.
Yes. I'm glad you're going down this road, because Greg said they feel like they're stuck in the middle, which is kind of something I agree with. Where are you headed with this, KP?
Well, I think that if you're the irony here is if you're the PGA Tour, you can go do all this stuff. You can go to Japan, you can go to Australia, and people are gonna, as long as you, I mean, the thing that unlocks all this for the PGA Tour is all the stars playing together at the same time. That has been, and again, this goes back to the PGA Tour's inability to, or their negligence when it comes to creating too many events. I mean, listen, like, I appreciate the John Deere for what it is. I appreciate the 3M for what it is. You want to be the top freaking tour? Take your stars and go to Beijing. Take your stars and go to Australia, right? I mean, this is what tennis does. This is what F1 does. And I think that you can unlock. I think that the PGA Tour a little bit. I know I keep focusing on them, but I think the PGA Tour a little bit is stuck in this like is the John Deere the best you can do with the biggest golf stars in the world? You know, like I feel like that's kind of weak. It's kind of soft. Like, go do something with these global stars. Rory McIlroy is a global star. Jon Rahm is a global star. You can go and bring in revenue, not just from people coming to watch, but from sponsors who want to be a part of this PGA Tour thing globally. And I almost feel like that's what LIV is kind of trying to do by spreading out, but they don't have the stars to be able to do it, right? They have 5 stars and nobody else. And it's like, Greg mentioned going out of your way to watch a NFL London event. Nobody's going to go out of their way to watch any LIV event because they don't have anybody worth watching. And I almost feel like they're trying to operate like that, but then they're also going to Tulsa and Tucson. It's a really weird, and I get that it's hard to when you're a startup like that, but it's kind of a weird schedule.
But even just to one step farther on that, is there somebody worth watching? I mean, think about what you talked about earlier, Kyle, with the audience of trying to get new golf fans involved, a younger golf audience involved. So take myself, I'm not a big soccer fan. The World Cup is an event I may turn on, but I don't know beyond Messi and Ronaldo, I don't know any soccer players.
Yeah,
I'm not
same.
turning that on because of the players that are on the field, but I turn it on because the World Cup only happens once every 4 years. And the World Cup has this rich history, and you know how much the world cares about it. And I know that the world cares about the Masters. I know the world cares about the U.S. Open. I'm not sure we're at a point yet where the world cares about the FedEx Cup. There are many other events on the PGA Tour I'm not sure the world cares about, but maybe at some point they will. But the thing is, if new golf fans, they don't really know the stars. They watch for relevance and for meaning more than people. And I don't know how LIV creates that. Kind of an interesting bridge.
I think LIV, and Greg, you kind of said this a little bit earlier, like they're stuck in the middle. And Patrick, the disconnect for me is that out of one side of your mouth, LIV is, the greatest thing ever created, the largest purses. We have the guys that you care about, the richest championships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yet we still won't schedule against any of the top events on the PGA Tour because why? Because you're not the big dog? Like, why are you? That says to me, you're not the big dog, right? Like, if you didn't care and scheduled against Bay Hill, go for it. Here are the events they're going to compete against: Honda, Valspar, Zurich, Mexico, Byron Nelson, Rocket Mortgage, Wyndham. That is not a coincidence. I think it's good strategy, but you can't tell me you're the big dog when you won't go up against the big dogs.
Well, real quick to add to that, Patrick, and this is probably what I was trying to say earlier, go to New York City, go to Chicago. You're going to Tulsa and Tucson. Like you're almost, and this is what Greg was referencing. You're stuck in the middle, and that you're almost recreating the kind of small town PGA Tour like feel good stuff, or I don't know what you're trying to do there, but then you're also going international. They're like, it's like they don't know what they want to be. Sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
No, you're fine. Yeah, they should be like the Cirque du Soleil, major cities only. I agree with you. Tulsa. My earphone might have died.
I can hear you.
Okay, I got one alive still, but yeah, major cities only. Tulsa's a real head scratcher. I honestly didn't even know they were on the list. But yeah, like to Rick's point about the scheduling, they're playing politicians essentially, right? They're saying one thing and then they're doing another thing. I don't think that's surprising in the slightest, right? It's smart to go against the Rocket Mortgage Classic and these smaller tier tournaments. And then almost to Kyle's point about context being the PGA Tour's, one of the greater assets that it has, with these smaller tournaments, it's almost hindering them, right? Just because they have those relationships with the communities already with the John Deere Classic, where if you pull the plug on that, the backlash probably won't be great to begin with, right? I agree with you that I think they should go international more often. I think it'd be great if the PGA Tour returned to Australia. They haven't done that since early 2000, but it's tough where you've been with the community for so long, and they do give back a ton of money to charities and local organizations, where it's tough to kind of sever those ties.
Yeah.
The thing that I think we got the most right, Greg, this is pat yourself on the back time. The one thing, yeah, great victory lap opportunity here. The one thing that is going exactly as expected is the OWGR situation for LIV, which block out all the noise from what you've heard over the last year. This is exactly how we kind of expected it to go, that the OWGR board was going to review the application. It was probably going to take a long time. And during that process, these guys were going to drop significantly down the rankings. They were going to lose out on major championships. And then we said, you know what? These majors probably aren't going to do anything about it. And Augusta National announced what was that last week, the week before? Criteria is the same. If you're in, you're in, you're out, you're out, which this is not Augusta National's fight to fight. Right. And this is going exactly as everyone anticipated it would.
No. And considering the roster, which we talked about earlier, you have a number of Masters champions on that list, which I'm sure was a big part of the design. So for the Masters is in kind of a tough position there, because how many guys got in to the Masters or are set to that didn't win just on OWGR? It's like three or four guys.
Yeah.
So it's a very small number.
Yeah.
So if you go the OWGR, if you change the official world golf ranking criteria, it's very clear you're just, well, not necessarily very clear, but you're trying to get a couple of guys out. You're getting out very few. And now you have to change your ultimate traditional criteria, which is your lifelong invitation. If you win, you have to change that in order to get LIV players out. It's just a very complicated thing. But if the OWGR goes the way that at least the PGA Tour hopes, and LIV players don't get OWGR points, those players will start to phase out, and you'll have your past champions there, but you won't have Eugenio Chacarra there. You won't have some of these other up and coming younger players who haven't won a Masters. And all of a sudden that number will go down and down and down. And Augusta National can kind of take themselves out of the situation. Because if they do anything, it will look like it's a purely an anti-LIV move. And there's a chance that hurts that it hurts the brand that is the Masters. So I think they did the right thing. And then look, the other two majors are open. Two of the other three majors are opens.
Truly opens.
They're truly open. And regardless of what happens with OWGR points, you can go qualify for the Open Championship. And if you're Eugenio Chacarra, because he's not a guy who has any exemptions for anything, then, and if you're really that good, you can go qualify. And for the Opens to say, well, you can't do that if you're a LIV player, would be a really bad move, in my opinion. So the one that stands out to me is the PGA Championship. I don't know how many LIV players are going to get into that because they don't go on OWGR points. They go on PGA Championship points, which are connected directly to the PGA Tour. So they're going to have a really hard time getting in if they're not already exempt from another major championship victory.
The inaction from Augusta National, Kyle, I saw some people saying that's a big win for LIV. I would argue that's a huge loss for LIV, right? I mean, yes, you get like 16 guys that are going to be in it in 2023, but that number is going to drop significantly over the course of the next couple of years. What if you're LIV, you wanted Augusta National to rewrite the rules to say top 50 in the OWGR, past champions, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and by the way, top 6 from the LIV point system or something like that. That is something that if it doesn't change long term, is you're just not going to see anybody from LIV play the Masters who has not won it.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess Augusta National, well, all these organizations, but especially Augusta National and the PGA of America are in a weird spot because to have the best field, I think you would say like you would want one of the top, like if you look at the other top, let's say 6 tours in the world, you say there's a reasonable way to kind of play yourself into the Masters, right? If you look at even the European tour that is kind of dwindled a little bit, you say, hey, if you win some tournaments on the European tour or you have some high finishes, you're going to be in the top 50 of the OWGR. There's a pretty easy, well, quote unquote, easy path into the Masters. The problem now is if you're a LIV player, you could win 7 tournaments in a row, and it doesn't. You're not getting into the Masters. And now Augusta National is faced with the tension between that and the fact that they're one of the organizations that runs the OWGR,
right?
And so do you like cut your own knees out by saying, well, we're going to give exemptions to the top 4 or 5 or whatever LIV players, which I think is a pretty reasonable thing to do. These are still really good players, and you're not really going to probably get anybody in there that wouldn't already be in. DJ is going to be a top 5 player on LIV. He would already be in the Masters, you know? Or do you say, but if you do that, you're sort of undermining your role running the OWGR, where you're saying, oh, this is not a legitimate league. You know, like they're in a, and not just Augusta National, but all these organizations, the major championship organizations that run the OWGR are in a weird spot there. And I think that's where it goes back to like the golf not having a governing body. I mean, imagine if the NFL was run by 6 different organizations.
The Canadian Football League, the Arena Football League,
the NCAA.
NFL,
it would be
or like the AFC East, the NFC East.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. All the divisions are running.
It'd be chaotic.
Yeah.
I actually think
Jerry Jones is like, you know, touting for all this other stuff, and he's going up against, you know, the head of the NCAA. It'd be nuts.
For sure, the Greg Norman of the NFL would be Jerry Jones. It would be chaotic, right? And I actually think golf is about the least chaotic it could be, given how many different chefs are in the kitchen. It's just, I think people don't realize how many organizations and people and CEOs and everything are involved in all this. And it really, I don't know if it's a blind spot, but it certainly came to light in 2022.
Well, that's kind of the thing here, Patrick, is they're closely connected enough that the best course of action for most of these organizations is inaction, which when the status quo doesn't change, obviously it's going to end up hurting the LIV guys disproportionately because they're not getting OWGR points, or if it takes another year to get them the points, and then all the governing bodies look at each other and say, okay, well, they're getting OWGR points. You know, we can wipe our hands with this, but the current crop of LIV guys have dropped so far, it's not going to matter. Maybe it helps the future LIV guys, right? You know, Phil Mickelson crawled, so Chikara could walk, right? Type of deal. But inaction is the best course of action right now for these guys.
Exactly. I mean, I think if you look at the list of winners from LIV existing, you kind of think about those middle of the pack players like Jason Kokrak or Hudson Swafford. But I think right behind them are the 4 major championships, right? They've done nothing, and suddenly their importance has only grown. So they really don't have any incentive to do anything different. Maybe down the road when those players like a Bryson, his exemption runs out from his U.S. Open victory. Maybe down the road they change something, but right now for the next couple of years, like you said, Rick, they really don't need to do anything. And I mean, the 4 of them, those 4 weeks are really the only weeks that matter on the golf schedule, it seems like.
Here's the invite list, and April's going to be sick, Greg. Here are the LIV golfers who are, I think there's 16 of them right now going to be playing in the 2023 Masters. It's Abraham Answer, Bryson DeChambeau, Sergio Garcia, Taylor Gooch, Dustin Johnson. Then you get to Brooks Koepka, Jason Kokrak, Phil Mickelson, Kevin Na, Joaquin Niemann, Louis Oosthuizen, Patrick Reed, Charles Schwartzel, and then we round it out with Cam Smith, HV3, Bubba Watson. So a pretty significant chunk of guys for 2023. That number will get smaller every year if nothing else changes.
It will. It absolutely will. And does it harm the event to have them play? No, but the reason the majors are so highly discussed is because it's thought to be a big deterrent for players to leave the PGA Tour and go to LIV. Right, you're putting majors up in question if you go to LIV, and that's a major deterrent, which is a problem. So you have to now get into this class where you're exempt for majors if you don't get OWGR points, which, by the way, I think is such an easy thing. I think there's such a clear reason why they shouldn't get OWGR points and why it can. There's a very clear path, and even from a legal standpoint, not that I know what the law says, but knowing what the official World Golf Rankings guidelines say, like what their rules are, rules being different than laws. You have a leg to stand on for sure on why they would not be included unless they make some wholesale changes. So look,
hold on. Did you say the one thing? Qualification process? Is that what you said?
No, he said it's very clear, but he has yet to reveal what it is.
Yeah, what's the one thing that's very clear?
Oh, well, you have you have team events, right? This would be an example for me. The LIV argument is, well, we have the best players, so we should be ranked. But you're playing a different format. You're playing 54-hole events, which it's very clearly stated in their guidelines, the average number of holes that have to be played for a tour. So if you play a 54-hole event on a tour, it's okay. You can get official World Golf Ranking points so long as the tour as a whole has enough. It plays an average of more holes than that, right? You play most of your events as 72-hole events, you can get a 54-hole event ranking points. But if every event is 54 holes, that changes things. When you have a team element involved, that changes things. I'll give you a perfect example. The Zurich Classic. It has PGA Tour players. It is an event on a sanctioned tour. This is also part of the reason why the MENA Tour thing makes no sense to me. This is an event on a sanctioned tour that doesn't get official World Golf Ranking points. Why? It's a different format. So the format is the reason why LIV will run into problems with OWGR, not the players they have, not the fact that they're backed by Saudi Arabia, not any of these other things that we discuss. The format is the issue. And that makes it very clear cut, very black and white, in my opinion.
I actually, I agree with you that the format's the issue, but it's a different, I'm coming at it from a different angle. So pull up this latest comment, producer Troy, from Kevin at 9:55, just so we have something to like kind of base this on. The line of why they shouldn't get OWGR points is just gum flapping. Sorry, I don't think you are sorry, but and we've talked about this before, but the reason they shouldn't get OWGR points is partly, I think, for some of the reasons that Greg said, but the main reason is that it's a closed league. and everything else is an open league. Everything that the OWGR measures is open. There's mobility between tours. There's not mobility into or out of LIV, right? You can't play your way out of LIV. You can't play your way into LIV. And that is so extremely different than every other league that there's a path where you could, and this is an extreme example, but there's a path where you could buy your way into the Masters, right? Because you're saying, well, I'm a star. I'll sign with LIV for very little money. I'll pay to be in LIV, and then I'll just get OWGR points because there's no cut, and everybody gets OWGR points, and I can shoot whatever I want and still get OWGR points. That's not, regardless of whether you think that's good or bad, it's just so different from the way the rest of professional golf operates that you can't, it's not an equivalent thing to be measured against the PGA Tour, against the European Tour, against the Sunshine Tour, against any other tour that is within the OWGR.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. Sorry, Greg, but it opens up a lot of like bad actors to be gaming the system when you do it that way.
Yeah. Well, one other thing Kevin mentioned too is we need to go back to moneyless ranking, and I think that's an interesting point, an element in this, because OWGR takes tours from around the world and tries to rank them and intertwine them. And this is why the things Kyle just mentioned and why my thoughts on the format are very important, because you're taking players. Let's use another analogy, college basketball. You're taking leagues, different leagues, and you're trying to decide who the best team is in all the leagues combined. And so you're saying this is more valuable, this strength of field is higher, this loss means less than this win or more. What you're trying to weigh all these factors and put them together into a cohesive ranking system. Well, if the Big Ten, Michigan and Ohio State had the best players in college basketball, but played 3-on-3 instead of 5-on-5, it would be very difficult to measure them against the SEC, who's playing 5-on-5. What team is really better? And how are you going to say that Ohio State is better, but they're playing 3-on-3 than Oklahoma State, who's playing 5-on-5? I mean, how do you even compare them? And that's where format, the closed league element, that's where all those things become so important. You have to consider what the OWGR is. And it's a combination of these moneyless rankings on all the tours. You're trying to take the money that sponsors are paying into these various tours out of it and rank based on a variety of different circumstances. And when formats are altered, it's very difficult to accurately do that.
Yeah, so I've kind of been Switzerland in the LIV OWGR point discussion. I'm kind of just out on OWGR, but I thought what Kyle said, one point that he made was kind of hit the nail on the head of why they probably shouldn't get points. And I had it written down. It's, what's going to happen when someone comes in and buys the 4 aces per se, and they're rich enough and they're like, hey, I could get Dustin Johnson to sign off on me joining the roster. And from that point, it's like, all right, are we going to, it's Brucey's time to shine. Are we going to give this guy OWGR points just because he has a ton of money? And that just can't happen, right?
Right.
You can't have
right.
people.
When Elon Musk buys the 4 aces and says, I'll play, and hey, DJ, I'll give you $100 million bonus if you're cool with me being your 4th team member. And Elon Musk shoots a 110. That's probably generous. He probably can't shoot 110. Although I actually recant that. I don't want to be suspended from Twitter. He would then be getting OWGR points, which he deserves, Mr. Musk.
Exactly.
Yeah, and now all of a sudden we're determining our major championships based on who owns the freaking Niblix. Like what is that's absurd. Like that's an absurd thing.
And Patrick, the other example would be and I think we've said this before, TaylorMade creates a TaylorMade tour, and it's their 15 guys, and they get OWGR points, and it's a closed system, and they all get it for no cut events, and they guarantee themselves in that would be a good investment by TaylorMade. That'd be a great investment to have all your guys playing all the major championships.
Exactly. But I think honestly, the the small population that's kind of against or for LIV getting OWGR points. I think it's just to rile up people at this point, right? I don't know if they truly believe they should. It's more just like, oh, this guy has a big following. I could get some engagement from a few tweets from him, maybe get some more LIV followers to follow me. So I think 95% of the people agree. They need to change stuff. Like Greg said, there's a lot of things that they need to change. The format, and having a cut qualification process. That there's a ton of things.
If they started tomorrow playing 72 holes with a cut and some type of qualification system from the Asian Tour, like you'd be pretty hard pressed to keep them out of the rankings.
No, then you could. Then they should get ranked,
right?
With an open league.
Yeah. So,
I would even say in that scenario, because they have great players, some great players, waive the however long it takes, year and a half, 2 years, waive it, do it quickly. I think I don't know what people think. By the way, my New Year's resolution, I'm blocking everybody on Twitter. Rudy Gobert. I'm Rudy Gobert on Twitter.
Good for you.
If you're a LIV boy and you're coming at me with this like Cam Smith nonsense, and just like if your intentions are just to like troll, you're getting just ejected. I'm just blocking the hell out of you. I never blocked before, and I'm Dikembe in 2023. I never blocked before, and my brother was here for Christmas. I might have said this last week, and he's like, you need to just start blocking people. Just get them out of your life. And all the LIV boys are getting blocked over the next year.
I don't block that much, but I am a rampant muter. I mute everybody.
I mute a lot. Yeah. but I'm blocking now because I just don't even want to see it.
All right, we're going to transition a little bit to the PGA Tour here. Anything else on LIV? I mean, we can circle back if something comes up, but anything else that we haven't covered in the last 62 minutes?
I thought you didn't say it, but can I read your predictions from February?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so before anything was announced, I think you put this on Twitter.
I did.
You said Bryson, Phil, Westwood, Adam Scott. Kind of surprising that he hasn't gone.
Yeah, apparently he just does not like Greg Norman, right? Like that's like the only thing, because there's like no reason he should not have gone.
Sergio, Kokrak, Justin Rose, P. Reed, Stinson, Paul Casey, Poulter, Graham McDowell, all those. Not Rose, but the rest of them. Duffner, surprising that he is not over there. Fleetwood, that was kind of a miss. Varner, Bubba, Matt Wolf, and then this is where this is the big miss, I thought, was Shane Lowry. He's been very adamantly against it.
Yes.
And then Terrell Hatton and Rafa Cabrera-Bello. It was a pretty good run by you.
So I tweeted that when we heard the rumor that they have 20 guys, right? So I said, okay, here are the 20 I think it is. 13 of them ended up being correct. Also, I must have really thought Rafa Cabrera-Bello was like a big deal a year ago, that I would have even included him one way or another on this list. But yeah, that's why I tried to zoom out, because yes, a lot of it was what we expected, but then the Dustin Johnson, the Cam Smith, and the Brooks Koepka, those are like those were pretty big steals in my opinion.
Yeah. Again, I look at this and then you combine those big steals with the viewership stuff we talked about before. And I'm just genuinely, more than ever before, I'm wondering what makes golf fans watch golf. There's been talk about the golf courses. But yet we've seen, AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am have some struggles with viewership before. Also some great success when Jordan Spieth contending and winning. But is it the golf course? I'm kind of leaning towards there's only one golf course that people will watch only for the golf course. I really think there's only one. Is it the players? Well, you got a pretty good list of players and the numbers aren't really that great. So what is it that people really care about watching golf? Is it the accessibility? And I'm curious about that. And again, I go back to this. I know that you think it's the players, but there are good players everywhere that are worth watching. But it's really hard to say how good somebody is when you're watching on TV. Because, I mean, I've seen a range full of players who are not tour players who will make your jaw drop with the way they hit the ball. But on TV, it doesn't come across that way. And so there has to be some kind of context. Well, I want to watch Jordan Spieth because he's a 3-time major champion. I like him. I've gotten to know him. But it's just it's a hard thing for me to figure out and pinpoint exactly why. Are you going to go watch LIV because Dustin Johnson is playing there? Maybe. I don't know it for sure and haven't seen evidence of it.
Well, to pose a rebuttal, Greg, why do people watch the Players? Why is the Players Championship one of the highest rated events every single year? Why do people watch the majors? Well, I mean, I'm not asking that rhetorically. I genuinely am wondering what your answer is to that.
Yeah, it's a big question for me. I think the majors, it's clear they're the most important events in golf. They when you win one, you go down in history, right? Your name lives on forever. It'll probably come up in a trivia episode in 50 years, right? The Players Championship maybe has a little bit less of that. Is the golf course a big reason why? Do people watch to see what happens on 17? I don't think so. I think it has to do with it's the flagship event on the PGA Tour. Right? It's a combination of the best. But so just because you have the best players, is there a specific player that you're watching for? Or is it because it's a group of the best players? And we're going to see who the best of the best is.
I think it's the best, a group of the best players playing meaningful contextualized events. Like, I think that's your answer, because what you're saying what you're saying when you say the majors are historical is that they mean something. There's context around them. If what Tiger did at the majors, or what Jai Nicklaus did at the majors, there's a history there. And I think, again, and I've been beating this drum, PGA Tour has gone away from this in their regular, they've leaned into it in the Players Championship, and I think you get good ratings there. And I'm really hopeful for 2023 that they lean into it more and say, like, hey, Riviera is meaning, like, this is what it means, and these are all the best players are playing it. You got to have both of those things combined to generate excitement around an event, and you can't do it 44 weeks of the year, which is what they tried to do, and that is frustrating. And I think part of the reason we're talking about all this to begin with.
I think also, I mean, we've been getting Players commercials since Cam Smith hit his final putt to win. Like, they market the hell out of that tournament, and the same with the major championships. You're not going to find LIV Golf events unless you're searching for it. And I mean, that's a huge hurdle that they have to overcome. But I wanted to bring up another point. I know Kyle mentioned 2025. That's kind of the first lifespan for LIV. Is what's going to happen when these guys' contracts expire? Most of them are on 4-year deals. Let's say they don't want to go back to LIV. Say they're done with it. Do they go through Q school again to try to get their PGA Tour card? Like, I think that's just something that,
I hope so.
Spanning out, as Rick has said many times today, that's such an interesting aspect of it all. When they, some players don't want to re-sign with LIV.
There will be someone who wants to come back before their contract is up. Like that will, okay, we'll talk about that because that's kind of the PGA Tour stuff. First, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. Okay. Someone will want to come back, Greg. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to be. But, hey, I don't like X, Y, and Z, or this wasn't whatever, and now I don't want to be a part of LIV anymore. I had a falling out with so-and-so. Now what happens? Or if you're the PGA Tour and Bryson DeChambeau's 4-year contract is up and he will be, my God, how old's Bryson?
27.
All right, so he's 29. So he'll be like
29,
32. And obviously draws ratings. If Bryson DeChambeau comes to you, Greg, new PGA Tour commissioner, and says, hey, my contract with LIV is up. I want to come back, baby. I'll see you, right? We're good? We're all good? Well, like, what do you say to that?
First of all, the challenge of that and the reason for the PGA Tour suspensions is as a deterrent. right? One deterrent is, well, you can't come back to the PGA Tour. One deterrent is you might not be able to get into majors. And there are a couple of other, you're not playing for legacy, right? There's a list of deterrents. One of them, and arguably the biggest one, is that you can't come back. Biggest one's probably the majors being in question, but you can't come back to the PGA Tour. Now, if you come back at the end of your contract, it says to players, if you go play LIV for a 4-year deal, you can go collect $100 million and come back home. If you allow it for, a one-time only thing, or if you know how the cell phone companies have, if we'll buy you out of your contract with what X, Y, and Z phone company to come with us. Well, at the end of your contract, there's a little less incentive there. So, hey, Bryson wants to come back next year. Well, that makes the PGA Tour look really good. It makes LIV look really bad. This guy doesn't want to be there anymore. They're paying him a ton of money, but he doesn't want to be there. So, and he realizes now what the PGA Tour meant. So he wants to come back. I see a world where that looks like a good thing for the PGA Tour, but I think it's very slippery. And you're inviting this open back and forth where players will leave the PGA Tour and go sign contracts to play on another tour, which means they can't fulfill both obligations. And that's really the concern. You're not talking about going to play 2-3 events. You'll be a PGA Tour player where you're going to go play a couple DP World Tour events. It's a different game. It's a different deal because of the contracts. So ultimately, I think you're saying no, or you're putting a specific amount of time on how long that suspension is for.
It would be a sticky pickle, certainly, KP.
Yeah.
And
the old sticky pickle.
And when you kind of look at the players, I think we were pretty close on who was going to end up going, but LIV did get a couple of steals. But there was also a time where we were looking around going, holy crap, the end of the PGA Tour is tomorrow, because it seems like everybody's going. Xander will be there. Cantlay will be there. And by the time, Rahm go, like, it's all over. Hideki's going, you know what I mean? So I guess let's look at the PGA Tour roster, where it stands, but also they get this huge benefit of always new blood, right? The PGA Tour always gets new blood because you've got qualification processes from other tours. You've got the college kids. You've got all that stuff. There's an easier way to replace golfers when you're the PGA Tour.
Yeah, and they've started moving toward that, right? With the PGA Tour U stuff. I don't know if is that what you're referencing with the?
Yeah, I'm just referencing, like, the contrast of LIV having to go pay for popular golf. The only way LIV can really get guys that matter is go pay for them after they've built something on the PGA Tour or on a larger stage at the major championships. The PGA Tour, on the other hand, is just when you add 25 or whatever it is, just new great players, some of them are going to become stars, right? Mm-hmm. And they just constantly have that machine churning.
Yeah. And it makes me think about think about some of the guys over the last 15 years that have won majors at a young age, like let's say a Spieth in 15. How much money would LIV have offered Spieth in 2015, right? Where it's this 21-year-old just won the Masters. I mean, that's the kind of, like, you want that young, not really tied to the PGA Tour type that isn't wealthy yet, and you can just give any amount of money to, and all of a sudden you have the hottest commodity in golf. And I think the tour, listen, I'm on this corner of that a lot of other people are on too, of like, they have catered to their JJ Henrys of the world for too long, and that's not gonna get it done. Like, that's unacceptable as a league. Like, you need to get the Alabama stars and the Ole Miss stars and the Texas stars into your system as quick. The Pearson Cooties of the world into your system as quickly as possible. And I think they're moving toward that. And I think it's a shame that LIV is the entity, the thing that kind of push them toward all of this. These are things you should be iterating on constantly if you're a league like that, if you're the PGA Tour. And I don't want to say they got institutionally lazy, but there was some, and this is part of the thing is the members run the league. JJ Henry's voting on whether the Ole Miss player can be, how quickly he can go into the PGA Tour. That's not a good thing. Imagine, I wrote about this in Normal Sport. Imagine Russell Wilson voting on like the draft rules of like whether Bryce Young, how quickly Bryce Young could make it into the NFL.
I vote for never if I'm Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that'd be insane, right? Because you're incentivized to keep players, and I'm not saying like I'm like oversimplifying that big time. That's not exactly how it works, but essentially, when you have members that are disincentivized to bring new blood in, like that's a problem for your league and one that needs to be solved.
But is there a question, Kyle, of the value of that new blood, right? The Ole Miss guy. Do we know who the Ole Miss guy is, or is that purely to detract them from going to LIV? Right, because we talked about earlier, you're not a star in college golf until you do something on the PGA Tour. So what is, in your opinion, the attractiveness of getting the Ole Miss guy onto the tour quicker?
Well, I think the attractiveness of getting the Ole Miss guy onto the tour quicker is your marketability for that guy, if you're the PGA Tour, is just a lot higher. The unknown is a lot sexier and more fun to think about and talk about. I mean, imagine people like us previewing the season and talking about more Justin Suhs rather than more JJ Henrys. Right.
But so do you think there's a difference between Justin Suh coming out of USC and Justin Suh coming off the Korn Ferry Tour as the top rated player on the Korn Ferry Tour, or the third rated player on the Korn Ferry Tour?
No, not really.
You understand my question?
Yeah, not really. But like make the churn even bigger. Make it 50 cards instead of 30 or whatever. I don't know. I just, there are a number of different ways you can do it. And I think some of these changes, Greg, are for not Rick's dad, but for Rick, like for the hardcore fan, right? And serving that fan with a Justin Suh that my dad doesn't know about, Rick's dad probably doesn't know about, but those of us who are paying attention are like, yo, this could be really fun next year, right? With Justin Suh. And so I think it's a service to the hardcore fan more than the just sort of generic kind of average fan. One thing I wanted to say about LIV, I think it's really interesting that they haven't gone after more content creators, that they haven't gone after more influencers. And that's a buzzword that sort of doesn't mean anything, but I've been reading a lot about how, and thinking a lot about how the people that have large audiences are going to shape the future of business. And we see that happen in our world, right? Like with the no laying ups that kind of shape the way that golf is consumed in some way, not overall, but in some ways. And I think that's going to happen more in the future. I'm surprised that LIV hasn't tried to like bring more of those people into, and this fits in with what I was talking about with Justin Suh. I'm surprised that LIV hasn't tried to bring more people into their orbit to kind of influence the way things get consumed.
The two pillars of defense, or at least the major pillars of defense, Patrick, for the PGA Tour have been elevated events. Now, a bunch of them increase the purses, increase the money, increase the guarantees up top and the PIP program, and pay your stars star-like money. That's one pillar. And then the other pillar kind of being the tour within the tour, this loose agreement that the top players are going to play the same events. I guess we'll find out if that actually is going to happen and how much it's going to happen. We've seen some guys like John Rahm be like, man, I got to play all those events. Plus I want to make sure I play the ones in Spain at the end of the year and this, that, the other. So we'll see how that actually shapes out. But basically the two big pillars to combat LIV.
I'm probably less optimistic about the schedule changes than most people. Like you said, I think we'll find out here at the Tournament of Champions just how strict that loose agreement is, right? Rory hasn't played in Kapalua in quite a long time. I think he said something in the match where he said he might not even start his season there as well. So,
I think there's a clause. I don't know if this is public or not. I don't even know if it's private. I've just kind of heard it going around. But there's a clause where you get to skip one of the 13 for all the.
Also with that, you can't have more than 3 players skip the same event.
That seems complicated.
Part of the opt
because
out.
Do you have to put in a time off request, and then if 3 people
PTO,
have already, sorry, we're short staffed that week, you're going to have to come in.
But yeah, it definitely sounds like that.
If you're ranked higher in the FedEx Cup,
yeah, what's the priority?
Priority. Yeah.
Okay, so they need 17 of the 20 minimum for these elevated. Okay,
and each guy can opt out of 1 in theory.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so I mean, look, we're about to start off 2023, and there's still a lot of moving parts, right? And even with the fall swing coming up, they strapped the international swing. That was kind of a suggestion early on with the new top 70 for the FedEx Cup, but we don't know what the fall swing is going to look like. We're hearing about this clause and how some players can skip some elevated events. I think there's still, I don't want to say a long way to go, but they need to kind of solidify things before we get to 2023, which I'm sure they are behind the scenes, right? We're acting like they're just sitting on their thumbs, just having holiday feasts and whatnot. But outside looking in, yeah, who knows? Who could say? I'm just a little less optimistic since there is some unknown, and we're changing to the year calendar, where I'm just a little, I don't know.
There is a lot of uncertainty, especially in the fall, Greg, because as Patrick mentioned, we're going back to the calendar year season, but those fall events, I guess, are still happening. I mean, they're already selling tickets for the Shriners in October, so it's happening. It seems like that's going to be priority ranking, guys battling it out for, their spot on the big board to see what events they can get into starting in January.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because remember, too, you're only having 70 people, qualify. So there's a lot of cards left on the table for the fall, and it creates kind of a secondary, the term tour within the tour has been used a lot, and this is kind of the other tour. Can you get into the elevated events? Can you get your ranking to a place where you don't have to play the next fall? That kind of a situation. So I think it's a smart thing, because you're dealing with a war on 2 fronts, if you will. One, we want to have really meaningful events with the best players, and we want to get those best players an opportunity to have an off season. But at the same time, the guys that are just coming off the Korn Ferry Tour, the guys that are potential stars in the making but aren't there yet, well, they need playing opportunities. And so we have this combination of the JJ Henrys, to use Kyle's earlier example, the JJ Henrys, their vote, and the vote of the Jon Rahms. And those 2 things clash in some ways. I think this is a really good opportunity during the fall, when most of the attention is on the NFL. Give these guys playing opportunities, still have an opportunity to go win $1 million, have an opportunity to increase their ranking, their priority ranking, get their card. Any of those scenarios are at play. And for the hardcore golf fan who's watching golf every week, no matter what, there's some interesting storylines that can follow that aren't connected to the FedEx Cup, which is in August, when you're watching an event in September, which is another problem I think has been addressed. So what it connects to is going to be a little bit different in the fall, at least from what I'm gathering.
The PGA Tour, Kyle, has been generally quite reactive in the last 18 or 24 months. Do you envision
18 or 24 years?
18 or 24 years, months, same thing. That does not make me think that you're optimistic about them turning into a proactive organization moving forward.
I don't know. I mean, they've done what they've needed to do. I think the difficulty is that and I've talked about this, I think before, if Jay Monahan goes to John Rahm and Xander and all these guys this time last year, and he's like, hey, here's the 13 events you're playing next year, they would laugh at him, right? Like they would be like, okay, clown, go away. Like, I'm playing the schedule that I want to play. And so it was the players that had to say, like, okay, this is a problem. We need to be at the biggest and best events together. So in some ways, I think the tour's hands are tied. And in other ways, I think they could do a better job of working, and it seems like they are, of working with top players to create the best league possible. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, when you say I'm not optimistic about them being proactive, I guess proactive about what? About improving the league? About fighting LIV?
Yeah. I mean, just in general, making improvements. I think you said something earlier about, there could have been this constant state of tweaking or updating things, whether it's messing with qualification processes, whether it's trying different numbers of tour cards to see what works. Even at the beginning of all of this, we knew LIV, or at the time, what, SGL or PGA, we knew something was coming, and it took until 20 guys exited the PGA Tour for them to say, oh crap, we're going to have to do something here.
Well, I think what I would say about that is, yes, that's true. But I think what I would say is it feels like everybody's on the same page now. It almost seemed like at the Players in March, Jay Monahan was like, well, what we are is good enough to defeat LIV. And it's like, well, that may or may not be true, but the status quo should not ever be like what you're aiming for. And I think what everybody's on the same page with now is like what I said earlier. We need to constantly be iterating, changing things, making incremental improvements. You see this in other leagues, right? Like, and I'm not saying the PGA Tour wasn't trying to do that. I just feel like they got a little bit satisfied with the status quo because of what? Because Tiger was in the league for the last 20 years, and that covers over a multitude of problems. Like that covers up a lot of your maybe institutional or systematic issues, and it brings in a ton of revenue. And now that Tiger's sort of like fading away a little bit, I think everybody's on the same page of like, we have to constantly improve our product, our league, and everything. Not like specifically because of LIV, but because that's what top organizations do. And so I am optimistic about that and hopeful for that.
I like ending on hope. Hope is a good emotion to end on, but any kind of final thoughts before we get out of here on LIV, PGA Tour, or literally anything else you guys want to talk about?
Shout out Judge Beth Freeman. We didn't go over that part, but
the GOAT.
It's been a year. It's been a year. The other little nugget is that next week we're back, baby. Next week is full on 6 episodes a week. Monday DFS, Tuesday mega preview, and then Greg, they're back. I've heard the calls. Everybody wants them. The round by round recaps.
Yes, let's go. I can't believe it's next week. Or I mean, in a strange way, it's felt like a long off season. But I'm really excited to get back. And it now all of a sudden feels like this is coming up quick, which is great because we're going to start off with a home run event. I can't wait for Century Tournament of Champions.
I don't share Patrick's pessimism about the schedule. I think that, I think this, I'm really, really excited about the elevated event schedule. Get back to me this time next year and I might not be saying the same thing. But I think it's going to be, you've got the 4 major weeks, which we all know are the craziest, most fun, most insane weeks of the year. Players is up there as well. Now you've got these other 12 or 11 that are kind of in that ballpark, and that to me is, I I think that's worthy of excitement, and they might not play out like that. It might not go as planned, but I'm pretty fired up about that. The other thing we haven't talked about is the Netflix documentary coming out.
Oh my God.
I think over the first, 6 weeks or month of 2023. And that's going to be fascinating. I don't know what it's going to be like. Is it going to be dumb to those of us who are in this all the time? Is it going to be amazing? How many F-bombs is Brooks going to drop? Like, the whole thing is just going to be super interesting and something that I'm sure we'll cover a lot in the early part of 2023.
It's going to be a nice time capsule. I remember what we were thinking in the moment. I remember what we were saying at Brookline and what we were saying along the way and all that stuff. And it'll be interesting to see how everyone else was thinking at those little checkpoints, as opposed to just looking a year back. So I'm fascinated with the Netflix documentary.
Yeah. The Genesis episode will be a good one for sure, with everything going on then.
It'll be. Which player are you guys most excited to see on there?
So they have. I don't have the list in front of me, but they have guys who are part of the Netflix documentary who obviously left for LIV. I don't know if DJ's one of them, but I know I think
Neiman.
like Poulter was, or Neiman or something like that. Yeah. So I'm just, Brooks, I don't even care who it is. I care about I want to see the process, the decision-making process. And because we heard a lot of, these guys are really undecided. They don't know. They're flipping every day. They're flipping every week. And if Neiman in February is like, yeah, I'm going, no problem, I'll see you over there, and he never wavers, like, I'd be pretty surprised by it. Like, I just want to see the process.
I think one fascinating mini aspect of this is that you're going to get a lot of people that don't necessarily, like, I watched the F1 show. I'm not really into F1. You're going to get a lot of people that are watching this, like wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, people that just aren't into golf, that I think Brooks Koepka has an opportunity to galvanize around him as a villain.
Yeah.
While also thinking that he's doing the opposite. Like he to me is like, it has this, I don't know if this has to play out. I think the Netflix people can frame it as this, where he enters in thinking like, I'm the king, I'm the badass of this whole deal. And they could frame it in a way that makes him look like like just a complete clown. And to where everybody that watches the show, especially people that aren't really into golf, is like, I hate that guy. Like, I really hate him. And I think that could be super interesting. Like, just there's going to be a lot of people like that. You know how they're going to come off, but that to me is going to be intriguing.
It is going to be a treat, and it took 92 minutes, but Kyle's AirPods finally took a crap. So that's what was going on here, which is, I suppose, our cue to get out of here. They worked for a while, KP, but now they're
they're fine. Everything's fine.
Stop speaking into the mic. It's absolutely horrible. All right. That'll do it. We'll be back next week for Century Tournament of Champions, full on first cut weeks starting Monday. Unbelievable stuff. Big thanks to producer Troy doing all the hard work behind the scenes. Patrick McDonald at amateur status on Twitter. Greg DuCharme at The Real GFD. Kyle Porter at Kyle Porter CBS. And you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.